Hey class, there are two portions to this lesson. This is the first portion. In the first portion, we're going to be asking ourselves, how is convection in the mantle related to the movement of tectonic plates? Today's lesson's objective is to explain how various mechanisms drive movement of the lithospheric plates. So before we begin, we want to ask ourselves in our input, which causes a convection current to flow? The rising of hot material or the sinking of cold material? So I'm just going to show you guys this video really quickly. So this demonstration simply shows you convection currents, and hopefully we'll be able to do this in our lab within the next week or so. So what you notice is the red food coloring in this video is representing hot or warm water that's traveling up, whereas down here the light blue or bluish color, that's representing cold water sinking. So warm water is rising and cold water is sinking. But you notice that the warm water kind of forms in the middle and then it spreads outwards and then sinks when it becomes cold water, similar to this pattern. It's pretty cool to see sped up. So I'll give you guys a few moments to look at that. So after seeing that, we want to ask ourselves, which causes a convection current to flow? The rising of hot material or the sinking of cold material? So now we're going to start transitioning into tectonic plates and things like volcanoes and earthquakes. So what causes the plates to move? So convection currents, so that's what we just saw, are the cycle of hot material rising and cold material sinking. So heat from the core of our Earth causes magma to rise to the asthenosphere and then move along the boundary of the asthenosphere and the lithosphere. So as this magma cools, it sinks towards the core, as we just saw in this cyclic movement. So this kind of causes the plates to move like groceries on a conveyor belt. So now we want to ask ourselves, what are the processes of ridge, push, and slab pull? So super easy. All you need to do is grab your textbook, turn to page 488, and answer this question in your notes. Once you're done with that, feel free to move forward. So copy this photo into your output. This is simply showing what happens. So remember, we're talking about our convection currents are occurring. So that's the red arrows here. So the warm material is rising, and as it cools, it sinks back towards our core. And then you'll see the movement of the slab pull that's moving from center to the left, center to the right, that you may have learned about in that last lesson. So once you're done with this lesson, move on to the next. So in this lesson, we want to ask ourselves, why do volcanoes erupt? The objective of this lesson is to explain how volcanoes impact the lithosphere. So look at the figure below. What is the relationship between plate tectonic boundaries, volcanic activity, and earthquakes? So your plate tectonic boundaries are all these black outlines here. Your volcanoes are the red triangles. And then the gray, this gray kind of color, those are earthquake zones. So what is the relationship you see between these three things? Tectonic plate boundaries, volcanic activity, and earthquakes. There's no right or wrong answer. So what is a volcano? Volcanoes are really cool. They might be my favorite thing to learn about with Earth environmental science. So a volcano is a mountain that forms when molten rock or magma is forced to the Earth's surface. What is magma? Magma, remember, in contrast with lava, magma is the molten rock that forms deep beneath the Earth's surface. So when magma cools and hardens, igneous rock forms. So remember, lava is different from magma in the way that lava is magma that reaches Earth's surface. So how does magma rise at a divergent boundary? So when the plates separate, the magma rises to the surface because it is less dense than the surrounding rock. So this often forms new ocean crust. So we were talking about with our convection currents, the warm material rises through the surface and it kind of circulates around the asthenosphere, but then it pushes the lithosphere, which is the crust, outwards. So how does magma rise at a convergent boundary? So a convergent boundary is when two plates come together, they converge. So as the oceanic plate moves downward, some of the rock melts and forms magma. So when magma is less dense than the surrounding rock, it is then able to rise to the surface. So volcanoes will form this way. So when do volcanoes erupt? So magma constantly builds up beneath the surface of a volcano. When the pressure beneath the Earth's surface gets too high, the magma is pushed up to the surface, spewing lava out of the volcano. So how do volcanoes affect the lithosphere? So the lithosphere refers to our crust. So how does a volcano affect this? The magma rising out of a divergent boundary creates new oceanic crust. So the lava cooling from eruptions in the ocean can form new islands. So if you think about Hawaii and all the islands, a lot of these islands actually formed from volcanic eruptions. Lava cooling from eruptions on an existing island can make the island bigger. So there are two types of volcanic activity which we'll learn about, pyroclastic flow and another thing called lahar. So these two are very different. They're both equally as dangerous as one another. The pyroclastic flow isn't any worse than lahar. Um, so what are the effects of volcanic activity? Um, so the effects of volcanic activity would be pyroclastic flow, the hot gases, glowing ash, and larger rock fragments in the atmosphere released during a volcanic eruption. And lahar is a mud flow that occurs when volcanic debris becomes saturated with water and rapidly moves down steep volcanic slopes. So for your output, you need to create a volcano foldable. So what you need to do is draw a picture of volcano. Label the following parts, so magma, lava, lahar, and pyroclastic flow. And then in your volcano foldable, you need to label the definition of magma, the definition of lava. Why do volcanoes erupt? How do volcanoes affect the lithosphere? How do volcanoes affect the biosphere? And you need to define lahar and define pyroclastic flow. So all of these little boxes are 1 point each, and then obviously your volcano picture on the front is 1 point each, and each of the labels are 1 point each. So here's an example of what your foldable should look like. Okay, and all of that content is in your notes. Make sure you get this volcano foldable done, and that's it, everyone. Have a nice day.